Hey guys, I'll be doing a live reaction to tomorrow's Halo Infinite multiplayer reveal and everything else shown at the Xbox E3 showcase. I'll put a link down in the description. It starts at 1 o'clock Eastern time. That's 10 a.m. Pacific. I will be doing it on my second channel, X2. We'll be starting about 15 minutes before the show begins, and who knows how long we'll keep going. I'd really love to see some of you there. It's going to be an absolutely hype experience tomorrow. Again, link in the description, but on with the video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. And we've got a doozy today because we are talking about some serious drama that's been going down at one of the most well-known Star Wars fan sites in existence, Wookieepedia, the Star Wars Wiki. And this is not the first time that I've talked about Star Wars Wikipedia drama on my channel. It might not surprise you guys to learn that things can get really heated when talking about 40 plus years of Star Wars content, but I will say what we're talking about today has arguably a happy ending. So let's get started with the most recent development because it's the most important thing in this video. Then we'll go back and look at some backstory. Alright, so I was browsing Twitter on June 10th and there was an interesting message retweeted onto my timeline by several people. It was a message from Wookieepedia, but not under their ordinary account. This is what the tweet said. In the early hours of June 2nd, our social media team lost access to Wook official Twitter account when a former administrator gained access and locked us out. Over the past week, we've had no luck regaining access, and for this reason, we have created a new Twitter account. So wow, there's a lot going on there, and for those who don't know, Wookieepedia is actually a pretty big thing now. It's not just some unaffiliated fan site, it's run by fandom, who runs a lot of wikis. I assume they're making some decent money off of it. It's definitely a business with full-time staff even at this point. So the fact that an administrator not only wanted to hijack the official Twitter account, but was able to, is pretty interesting. So what happened? What caused this administrator to go off the deep end, and has anything happened to the Twitter account? Well, for the second question, a little bit. There's not been anything too dramatic. Nothing questionable has been tweeted out. I've put the Twitter on the screen. Since the hijacking, really, nothing has been added. There were, however, a few things removed, which provides some insight into the rogue ex-administrator's actions. One of the posts that was deleted, allegedly, I didn't ask Wookieepedia to confirm this one, was relating to LGBT pride. In a private conversation with me, the person that runs the Wookieepedia account did confirm, however, that at least one of the posts deleted was relating to an official decision which was made on the site. And this is where we start going down the rabbit hole. We'll get there in just a second though. Before I dive down this rabbit hole, it's important to get a very brief amount of history, because Wookieepedia has made a conscious effort to change the way their site is run, to change the accessibility and friendliness to new users and to different users, and to change the perception of their site from the outside. Now, I'm not going to go into all of this, but Wookieepedia does have a history of bullying amongst its members, especially by high-ranking editors and even administrators. I'm not going to go into this too in depth because a lot of this is old wounds at this point, but if you watch my video on the whole boob controversy, and I'll get to that in just a second, you'll see how people were treated. There was, to be frank, as I mentioned, bullying, and it was difficult for new people to sort of break in past the old guard. This inaccessibility was definitely worse for people who weren't traditionally considered to be the main demographic for Star Wars fans, i.e. they weren't men. So this has partially been a major thing since Boobgate, I'm just going to call it, and again, I did an entire video on this, but the short version is that there was a Wikipedia article, and there actually still is a Wikipedia article on breast. And yeah, like the body part. Now, within that article was a picture of Ayla Secura topless, fully nude from the waist up, and a lot of people took issue with that, partially because, well, to be frank, it wasn't a canonical image. It was from an art book, which is not something that would typically be included on a Wikipedia page, especially where it's so different from anything else on the site, and where, to be honest, it is objectifying. A lot of people had that artwork up to ogle at, and it was just a really weird look for the site. And again, I'm not going to revisit that issue because this was probably the most dramatic, single contentious issue in Star Wars Wiki history until recently, and I'll get to that in just a second. So generally, there were several requests and arguments about removing this image. The old guard basically continued to shoot that down, led often by several long-term administrators, editors, etc. And actually, as a bit of news, that image has now been taken down, with people generally recognizing how bad of a look the drama was for the entire site, Not because of really the picture at this point, but also just because of the bullying and harassment and the general lack of trying to make Wikipedia a friendly place to everyone. But let's continue. What I mentioned as arguably even the more contentious issue was regarding dead naming. And again, I'm only going to skim into the details here, partially because a lot of the discussions and debates have now been purged from the site, but also because, well, it's pretty simple to lay out how things were. So for those who don't know, dead naming is when you refer to a trans person by the name they were assigned at birth rather than their name after transition. Dead naming is not a cool thing to do because you're rejecting a person's identity, and just generally, why would you do that? It's sort of an outwardly sign of disrespect. Now, dead naming can occur accidentally, of course, and that's really sucky, but if it's not on purpose, it's something that can be a learning moment, but that's not what was the issue here. The big debate on Wookieepedia was whether articles featuring trans authors, say a trans author wrote a Star Wars book or a Star Wars piece, should use their given name, i.e. their dead name, or their name after transition. Now, for most people, it would be obvious. Just use their after transition name, even when referring to past works. That's pretty much uniformly how you do it, whether you're talking about an actor, something a person did before transition, whatever. Now, if you don't know this, or if you're ignorant about it, again, it's a learning opportunity. You don't necessarily need to feel bad. What was going on Wookieepedia was a dedicated effort to dead name authors who worked on Star Wars projects, authors and creatives generally. This was an incredibly bad look for the website. Even if you don't understand trans rights or trans issues, it's pretty easy to understand why you would choose not to dead name someone. Other sources like Wikipedia, for example, don't do this even, so there's no reason why a Star Wars encyclopedia needs to dead name someone for encyclopedic integrity. The Star Wars Wiki is ultimately about fandom, and this was a really dumb controversy, and one that actually spread across the internet and became a pretty big thing. Was it making headline news? Probably not, but the fact that internal discussion among editors on Star Wars Wikipedia was making its way onto the average person's timeline, and people were seeing the Star Wars Wikipedia this way, was a really bad look. Making the matters worse were the fact that some of the old names that we've talked about earlier were leading the effort to bully and suppress discussion of this topic. Especially where, at least as far as I understand, the rules weren't really in stone at this point. But the admins were trying to do things like suggesting that it would be an overwhelming failure on certain votes to make an anti-dead naming rule, i.e. that not a single person even would vote against it, and obviously that was just ridiculous. Anyway, fandom, which as far as I know hasn't gotten involved with Wikipedia's internal operations too frequently in the past, actually stepped in this time after refusing to do so for the boobs article, by the way, and put out a statement stating that they've demoted and globally banned 2 of the top administrators on the site. 2 administrators that you'll be very familiar with if you've spent any time on the back end of Wikipedia. Fandom mentioned issues that I pointed out in my boobs video, and I'm just going to read a couple of lines from the release. They said, over the last week, Wikipedia has been a part of larger social media conversation that has resurfaced a number of concerns regarding how the community has been managed. A wide range of individuals informed us that both users, the ones banned, have contributed to a long simmering culture of bullying and intimidation on the platform. Multiple examples of those users acting in a counterproductive and offensive way were reported to us. After reviewing these conversations, we decided to take necessary action. The Wikipedia admin team also came together to offer an apology to Robin Pronovost, who was the center of this big debate. But yeah, before fandom intervened, this was a very bad look for Star Wars Wiki, partially because there are so many LGBTQ plus members of the Star Wars fandom, but even within the administrative team itself. So when I talked about one of the links being removed from Twitter, it was a link to this decision and this release by fandom, so we've got a pretty good idea of why the hijacking took place and perhaps who was involved, although I don't necessarily want to point any fingers like that. So yeah, that's the mess that's been going on, and it's not great. Wikipedia, as I've mentioned, has been trying to remove this general reputation for bullying and inaccessibility to new members. They've also launched some positive like Wookiee Project Pride, which I'll link down in the description. As for what will happen to the Twitter account, I'm not sure. I'm actually a bit surprised that fandom doesn't have some strings they can pull over on Twitter to get the account transferred back into the hands of the Star Wars Wikipedia team. I will say, though, the original account wasn't verified, which probably doesn't help things at all, but we'll see what happens. As for now, again, nothing has been tweeted out from the new account holders, but it's definitely an interesting situation you might want to keep your eye on. By the way, the new Twitter account is at the Wookieepedia. I'll include that as well down in the description. But guys, let me know, have you been around on Star Wars Wiki? Have you encountered any bullying? Have things gotten better, like it certainly seems they have? Look forward to reading all of your thoughts, questions, and comments down below. Until next time, though, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.